Hello, I'm Bruce Stout, and I'm the director of the Rainmakers Knowledge Center. Today, we have a very interesting webinar, The Human Capital versus AI Dilemma. I'm not quite sure where all this is going to go. We have a very broad spectrum of people on this call, and it should be very interesting to see where we wind up with this. As we all know, AI is a living creature that's slithering around and moving and changing every day. And we never know where it's going to be in the next hour, so this should be a little bit of fun. What I'm going to do, I want to start by introducing our esteemed panelists. Each one of you, please tell us who you are, and then just a minute to tell us what you do. And I'm going to start with Sean Flynn.
Bruce, thank you for the invitation here. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a mid-market investment banker focused on mergers, acquisitions, growth capital. So quick summary of what that is. You go through life, you meet that special someone, you get married, two equals become one, merger. You walk in the park, you see a puppy, you go, oh my gosh, I want to acquire it, I want to bring it into my family. You do that through an acquisition. That puppy needs to go to the vet, it needs shots, it needs food to go from a puppy to a big dog, it needs money, it needs growth capital. All those transactions in life, I do those on a daily basis with companies. And if you're watching the video, my QR code connects with my LinkedIn. I'd love to have a conversation with anyone. Bruce, thank you.
Thank you. Fernando.
Hi, Bruce. My name is Fernando Coas from the law firm of Gleason, Coas & Cullen, based in New York City. I primarily devote my practice to commercial residential real estate as well as business law. Many of my clients are foreign-based. I'm their inbound lawyer with respect to any investments or acquisitions they want to make in New York City and the surrounding area. Thank you.
Thank you. Tina.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Greenbaum. I am a high-performance coach, a psychotherapist, and the CEO of Mastering Under Pressure, which is a program designed to increase a teen's ability to manage themselves under intense pressure.
Okay. And next we have Steve Maggi.
Hi, I'm Steve Maggi, and I'm an immigrant and a founder, and I'm the founder of SMA Immigration Law Firm. And I did that because I want to help other founders, entrepreneurs, and investors who want to set up their U.S. companies, startups, in the tech world and in other spaces to get their green cards and visas.
Okay, Jim Duffy.
Thanks, Bruce. Jim Duffy, founder and CEO of Blue Key Consulting. We help companies profit and grow by leveraging their data. So you use many different applications to run your business, but that data is disconnected. If you want to get a full view of how your business is running and identify areas to improve it, to drive down costs and increase revenue, we can help you do that. And our topic today around AI loves data. So I'm anxious to get into the topic.
Okay, great. And finally, Larry Chester.
Good morning, Bruce. Larry Chester, CFO Simplified. It's different with the CFO. We work as fractional CFOs for entrepreneurial businesses, doing everything from QuickBooks bookkeeping to mergers, acquisitions, and strategic growth, helping entrepreneurs know what they don't know and giving them the answers to things that drive profitability and growth.
Okay. Larry, actually, we're going to start with you with our first question, and that is, AI is going to likely have a major impact on financial management and reporting. Of course, it's difficult to read a crystal ball and see all of the answers, but do you think AI will eliminate positions presently held by humans? And if so, how? And which ones?
I think the AI is helping to drive a technology revolution within businesses. I don't think that in itself, AI is going to eliminate positions, because I think anybody that can't think for themselves should be probably replaced by AI or other computer systems. What it's going to do, though, is as part of the technology changes that are happening within the industry, there's going to be a continuous movement to have automatic data interchange between different parts of a company so that business owners and senior managers end up using their data systems to get answers to the questions that they would normally ask for. I think what's going to happen with AI is that AI is going to start to ask questions and proactively create answers that people may not have thought about asking before. Management has always looked at financial statements and the proper running of a company by looking at exceptions and dealing with exceptional management as a means of driving solutions and driving things that need further scrutiny. And I think what's going to happen is that as AI continues to develop, management will come in the morning, turn on their computer, and the AI system will have already reviewed the results of what happened last week, yesterday, and present them with issues that need to be addressed. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think you're not going to be in a position where people will be having to look through data to find out where the problems are, because I think AI is going to be analyzing and identifying where the problems are so that management can work to resolution.
So as the AI is identifying the problems, I wonder if it's going to create some as well. AI is kind of prone to mistakes, as we've seen. How do business owners and financial managers safeguard their organizations in this sense?
I think this provides greater import to the fact that business managers and owners need to understand what financial statements and what data that they're getting is telling them. It's not a matter of taking it as the gospel when you get information from your computer system, but really having to understand what the data is telling you. In just from a historical perspective, as a CFO, when I have gotten information from my staff, I always look at it from a point of reasonableness and say, are these the answers that we were expecting? And how far off is the information from what we had expected? Normally speaking, the things that create difficulties with regard to AI from the point of view of hallucination results is that you're going to get things that are so far out of whack that you're going to sit there and say, that doesn't even make any sense. Well, that's the same thing that we've always been having to deal with when we're getting data from our staff people. If the information doesn't make sense, then you need to look at it more closely. The difference between 1.0 and 1.2 in an answer that you get from an AI result is not going to drive changes in management. When you start to look at numbers, instead of getting a 1.0, which is what you're expecting, you get a 3.5, that is probably the result of an AI mistake or a mistake from your staff. And those are things that you should be able to identify closely. You've got to be able to understand the numbers so that you can change what you're doing within a business to drive it. You can't just take it as a given.
Larry, as a fractional CFO, one of your roles is to steer a company forward regarding its financing and making sure there's adequate working capital and it doesn't cost too much. Where do you think AI is going as it relates to companies securing financing, and what is that cost going to be looking like?
I think what's going to end up happening is that the analysis of a company's financials are going to be driven much more tightly by AI than it is by individuals. I think that it's going to be even more important in the future for business owners and people who are seeking financing to be able to go to their lender and tell their story and not just be able to look at the data, because the data is going to be given them by the AI or by the software and the analysis they're using. That data is only going to go so far. Lenders primarily loan money to individuals, and they need to know that the owner or that the president of the company that they're loaning money to has an understanding of what's happening and has an understanding of where they're trying to take their business. It is that story that's going to allow lenders to continue to loan them money and not just the analytics and the numbers that they're being given.
We're going to be coming back to you shortly, but in the meantime, is there anything else that you'd like to add at this point?
No, I think that if there's anything that I'm going to say in addition, it's that every new tool that we get, whether that be automation, whether that be mechanical improvement, whether that be, in this case, now we're dealing with AI, was just a change in the way we need to do business. It's important that every business owner understand that the business that you operated yesterday is different than the business that you're going to be operating tomorrow. And it's a matter of adapting and using these tools to help you make the decisions you need to make to stay ahead of where the economy, where your competition, and where your problems may come from. You can't just live on your laurels because the world is changing around you. And these are all things that we not only need to accept, but need to adapt to be able to take advantage of the information we get.
Larry, thank you for the perspective that you've given us. It's very interesting from a financial standpoint. And I think you're going to be playing a major role going forward in helping companies to steer through all of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, going to go to you. Building corporate AI models is becoming a really hot topic these days. What can you tell us about that?
I will tell you two key things. One, AI is here to stay. I think everyone's confirmed that it is the hot topic. It is what everyone is talking about. And that goes into my second point is AI is creating a lot of pressure right now. It's creating a lot of pressure for business owners, C-level executives to respond to their stakeholders and their customers around how are they going to leverage AI. So it's really creating started out as an interesting, intriguing technology that is breaking down barriers and allowing non-technical folks to interact in plain language. I think that's amazing. But now we're seeing not only business owners, software companies, right? Any SaaS platform that is out there, if you look at their roadmap, you look at their press releases, it's all about where they're implementing AI. So it's a very good thing, but it also is having a lot of mixed results in the AI that's being applied. Sometimes it's very bells and whistles, allow you to do the same thing that your existing software platform does through a different interface. For example, as Larry was talking about the financials, it's, having a report say, here's what your quarterly revenue and profitability is, and being able to click on a report versus ask that in plain English is fun and an interesting way to interact, but it's not really going to be a game changer. It's not going to enhance your product or business. So I think we're seeing a mix of that, and we're seeing a lot of noise now being put into the market because of that pressure.
Okay. How can AI generate more data than can humanly be absorbed? It seems like that's a huge challenge. You can get bombarded with so much data now. What do you do with it, and how do you manage it?
I think it all starts with controlling what data you put into your models. So the data explosion is nothing new here. I don't think, we see all these different connected devices, IoT. You look at a website, you look at the amount of data that is collected when someone visits the page. We know every click, every move, and how long they're on a particular object. So that data explosion's been there for a long time. What AI is allowing us to do is really start to consume all that and make it much easier to actually traverse. And on the flip side of it, it's also, because it's doing these, it can interact with humans in different ways. It gives us the ability to add on and capture a lot more data than we ever have before. So the data explosion is going to continue to grow over the years as AI becomes more prevalent. So the key thing is really understanding what data is going in and out of your systems. First thing we need to do is make sure we're protecting our corporate data as well as our customers' data. That's first and foremost. Once we have our arms around that, we're at least securing our customers and our corporation. Then we need to really figure out what's going to be most useful for our organization for AI to leverage and take advantage of. If we don't do that and take the kind of throw everything at it sort of thing, we're going to find inconsistency with our results. We're going to find it's terribly hard to manage. And more importantly, it's going to be terribly hard to audit, which is going to lead to poor adoption, lack of trust of the data and the AI models, and a lack of reputational risk for the company itself.
How do you see this going forward?
I see organizations, there's two schools of thought. As you mentioned earlier, there's a lot of larger corporations that are trying to build their own platform, their own AI models, and that's all good and well. And when we talk about AI models today, we're mostly talking about these large language models, which are incredibly complex, incredibly expensive to run, and so we need to really pick our spots. The other aspect of it is most organizations, small to large, are leveraging SaaS applications, right? Cloud-based solutions that you buy a subscription to, that as they make new enhancements there, you get the benefits of that by paying the same price. And as I said earlier, every single one of them are introducing new AI components to it. And the advantage of that is, one, you don't have to pay for that development. Two, it is functionally specific to the application. For example, if a CRM application is creating a new way to predict or do research on a prospect, it's going to be specific to that function. So instead of going out and building it, the strategy here is to figure out how do we get our data that we're collecting from our customers and from our operational processes into the highest quality and feed those into those applications to then take advantage of AI. by taking care of your data and having a strong data management policy in place. By virtue of that, pushing that data and sharing that data, you're going to reap the benefits that all the hard work that's being done by your software providers.
I'm going to ask you about final thoughts later on as we begin to close, so we'll come back to you at that point. Anything else you'd like to add right now?
I'd like to go back to where I started. AI is not going away. It can be interesting, but also could be very daunting and challenging. And folks often ask, is it going to replace me? I will say with certainty, if you don't embrace it, there's a higher probability that you will be replaced. If you do embrace it, find out how to better perform your job and the job of your team. I think what you'll see is acceleration and an upside for the individual on the human side of this conversation.
Okay, thank you. At the end of this, I'm going to pose a question to all of you about how you think AI is going to impact the voting process as we move forward. So that'll be an interesting question I'm going to pose to you. I'm going to move on now to Sean Flynn. Sean, it seems like all investment focus seems to center around AI companies these days. Is that in fact true? And what does it mean regarding non-AI companies that are looking for investors?
Bruce, good question. So I'm based in Silicon Valley. I work with a lot of tech companies. And I mean, that's a really good question in the sense that there's a lot of companies outside that don't have AI that are of interest, but you're not going to hear about them on the news. Everything on the news is around that hype cycle of AI. Just like in the past, we've had those cycles around Bitcoin and Web3 and autonomous vehicles. And even before that, there was another hype cycle of AI. So it comes and goes in waves where, hey, this is what's in the news. This is what's driving clicks on Google searches and that. Let's push this content out to the masses. So right now, everything we hear about in the news, yeah, it's AI. But in reality, in the background, there's a lot of other areas that are getting attention, robotics, medical, autonomous vehicles. But at the same time, all these companies will say they have an AI component to it because their investors want that in their investment thesis when they talk to their LPs, when they go out and raise capital, when they're telling the masses about their portfolio companies. Oh yeah, we have all these AI companies because that's what the investors are asking them. Hey, are you looking at this? Are you focusing on this? And even if the company has, nothing really to do with it, it's let's throw AI in there, or going in the past, let's throw blockchain in there, or go in the past, let's throw this in there. But I mean, AI has been around more or less since the 1970s is when it started, and if you have algorithms, you more or less have AI. I'm not the expert. I'd like to defer to Jim Duffy on that one and have him comment, but it's been there in the background this whole time, but it's just now kind of in everyone's face everywhere you go. So, but there are a lot of companies that, you want to consider them AI companies, like robotics and that have a component that are getting a ton of investment right now, that are getting a lot of interest, but they're just not getting the news press, those cycles that we're focusing on because of NVIDIA's new high or Microsoft's release or these other things that are happening.
I'm curious to know when the cycle is going to end and what the next one's going to be. Do you have any sense of that?
I'm not sure, but there's a lot of interest in quantum computing. Mm-hmm. I've had a lot of conversations with investors around that a lot. Cybersecurity, a lot of people raising funds for that. Also, a lot of investors are raising funds for overseas investments. There's a lot of interest in what's happening in Africa and these emerging countries, emerging geographic areas. I don't know. Here in Silicon Valley, you go to one event over here, you think this is the new trend that's going to happen, and then the next night you go to this other event, you're like, that's okay. This is where the attention is, and I don't know, butterfly syndrome, always here, always there, pretty lights. I guess it's part of Silicon Valley. So,
there are companies that are actual AI companies that don't just throw AI into their prospectuses to make them sexy. What are the real AI companies and which ones are really the darlings of investors right now?
There's a couple that people know about it in the news. There's others that are private, but are still commanding huge valuations. I mean, that's a good question, but I mean, there's so many sectors that are getting attention with AI helping them out. I mean, fintech's getting a lot of attention with banking for fraud detection, credit scoring. There's, even autonomous vehicles for the self-driving, for traffic management, for optimizing traffic flow using AI for that. There's the retails with recommendations for their customers one application that I saw really interested in, this kind of goes back to what Larry had just mentioned earlier, is there's a company here, Series B company, I won't mention them, but if you follow my podcast, you can check them out. Their episode's coming out soon. They just work with small businesses, automating their bookkeeping, but because of the AI component, they're able to in real time give price adjustment recommendations for products in the stores, for inventory, for all these things that in the past have only been for those bigger companies. Now they could do it at the mom and pop, one little store at the corner level, and that's because of all the computing power in the background and data and AI, and imagine just how that evens the playing field for so many people. So there's so much happening in the background that are major disruptions in business themselves, but we're not going to know them, either one, because they're not going to get any news press, or two, it's going to be slowly introduced over the next couple of years and it's just going to become the standard. But there's a lot happening, and AI is going to be, if it's not already, the places it's not, it will be.
What is your podcast?
Oh, it's called The Silicon Valley Podcast. I'm on episode something like 232 now. I've got to interview some incredible people. In fact, many of the people I've interviewed were at an event I held last week in Silicon Valley. Some of the people here were speakers on panels, Steve Maggie, Tina Greenbaum, and we'll be hosting it again next year. And Bruce, I'd really like you and the group here to have a panel, get on stage, and bring a little bit of the East Coast to Silicon Valley.
Like to do that. That'd be fun. So this news cycles now are talking about companies where their values are far above what the actual intrinsic value of the companies are. We've all seen them. We all know. In fact, we know some of them probably pretty closely. So with that knowledge, how can an investor really evaluate which companies are worthy of investment?
That hopefully they have great advisors working with them to map out their strategy, their wealth advisor, their tax planner, whoever. And depending on the stage of the company, whether it's a public company or a private company here in Silicon Valley, here in Silicon Valley, you'll get people that invest in companies because they met the founder and thinks the person's great, or they are industry experts and they believe that a company they worked at is a great acquisition or will acquire that company eventually, or they believe in, going back to maybe the medical imaging, that it can save lives and that's how they want to contribute to the world by helping this technology grow. So with all the companies out there, just because it says AI does not mean it's a great company. And also, if it doesn't have AI, it doesn't mean it's a great company. There's a lot of fundamentals, processes, and that in a business that people need to do some due diligence, do some research. And it's a quick way to go broke when you're not familiar with things and you just throw some money in it. It's almost like going to Vegas. And that's one thing I see here in Silicon Valley all the time. Overseas investors, people that aren't from the tech area, coming in with some past wins from what they were doing prior, jumping on the bandwagon, going all in, and then finding out that their retirement's postponed a good amount of time. So, be careful and seek advisors. Go to your network, Bruce, here. Talk to some people before making decisions.
Thank you, Sean. I wanted to keep this very broad-based regarding areas we're going to discuss in this webinar. And so we're going to go into an entirely different topic now with Fernando Coates. Fernando, real estate valuation seems to be headed in the direction of AI modeling as well. What's your take on that?
Well, thank you, Bruce. I'm glad to be here again with everybody. Your question is interesting. Give me an example. I'll give you an example which would apply a lot to houses, for example. Who is the most important there? The appraiser. The appraiser visits the property, decides or estimates its physical condition, collects and analyzes all the relevant data, and concludes the process by summarizing the estimated worth of the house or a building. Now, what would AI do for this, and how would it help? Well, it would help with respect to a volatile market where there's an ever-changing real estate landscape, which we see here across the United States, and I see it here especially in New York City. It helps with the lack of easily accessible and reliable data. You can't always obtain that data with respect to certain properties. So you can make, or the appraiser can make a fair and transparent valuation, or make it possible to have such a valuation. It can help with respect to human bias and conflict of interest. People are human, and they'll act and think about certain things depending on where they grew up, how they grew up, and what they see with respect to the properties that they're trying to appraise. And that can lead to misleading data, or even something that would be completely untrue, unintentionally or even intentionally. There will be issues also with respect to legal and compliance issue, which could help with AI. And especially because valuation a lot of times doesn't have standard criteria. How do you judge, for example, the value of a single family residence with one garage, or a co-op apartment like here in New York, and what floor is it on, or a condominium, which other things apply. Sometimes there is no straight standard criteria that would apply to all properties. So there's a lot of AI can help with that, with respect to that. And so in the process, the real estate evaluation itself can end up being, when inspecting a property, slow and long and loaded with a lot of paperwork, and AI could help with that to avoid any kind of possible human-made errors or the like.
Okay. So AI, is that going to take over as the negotiator of commercial real estate transactions?
It'll help. It'll help, just like it'll help the appraiser in some kind of valuation by giving access to data and so forth they wouldn't have readily or access to. But I'll give these two different examples that'll help with lease negotiation. How could AI assist? Well, they can draw upon historical lease data. They can draw upon and analyze current market trends, or analyze, for example, foot traffic patterns in an area that's densely populated, like Manhattan or the downtowns of so many other cities, with respect to the surrounding area, and provide a comprehensive report that not only suggests the optimal rental rate on current market conditions, but also can highlight potential negotiation points, hopefully that could strengthen the position at the negotiation table for the persons who are trying to agree upon this lease. Or, for example, a purchase and sale contract, which it's a slightly different animal and has other aspects that can affect the actual contract itself. AI could assist a business or its lawyers, for example, with the ability to rapidly analyze the contracts themselves and extract what are called actionable insights, certain natural language algorithm, which I don't understand how they come about, but I know they exist, can read and comprehend documents identifying, this is an important thing, and this is the job what a lawyer does, key terms, clauses, and critical data points. The AI then can flag areas that could require further negotiation by assessing the favorability of such terms that have been identified for each party. And this is a human failing. A lot of times compare the contracts visually, and someone can get tired, whatever, looking at two different contracts. AI can help with that, with templates and precedents, and especially detecting unusual or missing provisions, which sometimes is hard to spot for a lawyer who's doing that analysis.
So, you talk about AI as it relates to the contracts, and what about the drafting of contracts, and is that going to make your work less valuable or perhaps more valuable?
Both, which I know is not the answer you're looking for, maybe. I think it'll help it won't take over, but AI will help in myriad ways. It can customize contracts. It's important to have some kind of basis there and to build upon that, which and then the experience of the lawyer could help with providing something that's more on point with respect to certain deals, because everything is so different in every real estate deal. The classic phrase, location, location, location. that's the key almost always to the price and how you negotiate a contract in any case. I think AI can also increase efficiency and ease of putting these documents together. It could lead then to cost effectiveness. So rather than spend 3 hours having it typed in an old-fashioned typewriter that would have been done 30, 40, 50 years ago and paying someone else to do it, I have it straight on the screen and I can use it, and it can be more cost effective. And then it can accelerate document review, especially I work with 3 screens. It's great. I have one contract there, one in the middle, one on the left, one on the right, and I can compare them. It's a lot more easily done than otherwise.
Does that mean that you can bill 3 times over?
No, the point is cost effectiveness. It's not all others are just in it for the money. Just most.
Okay. What else do you want to add?
Well, I'd like to add that AI is immensely beneficial, even though I don't understand how it works, but it can't replace, and I may sound defensive when I say that, I don't want to sound like a Luddite, human expertise or what I would call soft skills. It can't replace the trust that may have not been engendered and exists between the parties over the length of the negotiation. Your knowledge of the industry itself, it can't replace that. It has information, but it doesn't have that kind of knowledge. And of course, it can assist with problem solving, but I think that's still a human trait. And empathy, which remains, I think, at the core, is the key of all negotiation. There is the human-to-human interaction there. So it's a tool, and it's an effective tool, but it cannot replace.
Okay. Thank you. Tina, moving on, effective tools. I'm going to ask you a very simple question, although it may seem simple, I don't think it really is, and that is, can humans and AI coexist peacefully?
I think so. I think if you consider all the different pieces that we're talking about, all the different levels of business, as I'm listening, here I'm close to Silicon Valley, so there's lots of founders, lots of people under a lot of pressure, a lot of just new businesses, all the way up to the multi-million dollar businesses. And so there's humans everywhere along the way. And the AI, what I find as a small business owner myself that, kind of connects with lots of very big businesses, how do I use it? How does it exist with me? How does it exist with my clients? It's in many different ways. People looking for resumes. How do I write a really great resume that somebody's going to look at? So what I'm finding, again, in this, and I'm connected to a lot of small business people like me, it's like somebody's been there before me. It's like if I want information and I want, as Fernando was saying, if I want it quickly, if I want something to give me ideas, it's wonderful for that. Again, for along the way, and then for the big business with the data and all the things that Jim was talking about, it can only enhance, the operations that you're doing and that you're focused on, and helping people kind of take big data and bring it down to something that's the human can look at. This is the same thing that Larry said. It's not going to take away the years of experience and the way that we look at the information. And so I think that they can coexist. Again, there's a fellow in my network who just wrote a book on AI, and he said, everybody wants it. I was at Sean's event. If you heard AI once, you heard it about 1 million times. It's the next thing. It's the next thing. You got to be in it. And all that pressure that everybody was feeling, like, where do I get in? How do I get in? What do I do? And his whole book is about, well, everybody wants it, but how do you use it? How do you use it in your business? How does you make it so that it's valuable? So as with anything that's new, there's a time of adjustment. It's how quickly can we adjust? Again, what Larry said, how quickly can you recognize that what was 2 minutes before is no more, that it's here. I have to shift. I have to be agile. I have to be looking. I have to get help and support for the things, just like Fernando said. I don't know how it works, but I know that it's valuable. So I have to be in it. And then we have the fear of losing out, which is, again, what I heard so much at Sean's thing. I want to be in it. I want to know. I want to be up to date. I want to be cutting edge. And I want to be the pressures. There's always pressure. And this, I think, increases the pressure for any business at any level at this moment in time.
So increasing the pressure, you're talking about, I guess, stress levels. How is that impacting entrepreneurs and family business owners, as an example?
Well, it is, because you don't want to be left out. And if you don't even know, you run your business for so many generations, perhaps, in a certain way. Who's the head of the family? So what family businesses have? You have generations, right? So you have perhaps the newest generation that's taking over from the older generation, where this is just another thing that I have to adjust to, and I have to shift, and I have to give up control, and I have to give it, and then you've got the other generation, behind it, who's, let's move. I was talking to one of my clients about resumes, which is why it's on my mind. And he said, these young kids are just, they're just going to AI and saying, create the cover letter, create this, create that. Somebody who's not in that generation, who's not quick with it, is going to be left behind. So how quickly, again, do we shift? So going back to your family businesses, I think it's that classic piece that change is happening from generation to generation, and how to manage all the personalities and the desires and the sense of control. This is just another piece of that.
No, you brought up a really interesting point, and that is the loss of skills as a result of things like AI. For example, young people today, they don't have great math skills because they don't need it. They can just press a couple of keys and they get the answer to what they want. Is AI going to do the same thing?
I think it probably has to do the same thing. It gives you answers that you don't have to think about.
But it's not a good thing or a bad thing.
I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing, because I think what's missing is the critical thinking, which I think to all of us that have gotten to where we are at this moment in time, you have to be able to think through this data. I was never really great in math, but I love statistics, because I love being able to, well, maybe it's this and maybe it's that. And maybe if we switch this piece and we switch that piece, then we would get the answer. So it's the critical thinking that I think we have to be very, very careful not to lose.
What are your clients telling you about their feelings about AI?
I think it's pretty much what I said. I talked to one gentleman yesterday, and he's kind of like jumping on the bandwagon as quickly as he possibly can. And other people that are not jumping on it feel like they need to. Like, what am I missing? Again, that's fear of missing out. So I think there's a lot of fear, honestly. People that have come up in a certain industry and that are highly, highly skilled, but maybe not skilled in this level. So they feel like, again, what am I missing? What do I need to add? What's the next certification? What's the next thing I need to? So there's a lot of pressure. It comes back to that word of change. It's the only thing actually that we can count on in life. And I think, I always come back to good mental health. It's how quickly can you recognize that what was 2 minutes before is not now? How quickly can you get into the now? And this is a very complicated topic, as we're talking about, between the technology.
It's going to get more complicated as time goes by. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it for now.
Okay, I'm going to come back to you because we're going to get into that critical thinking that you brought up. I think that's an intriguing question to ask, and I'm going to ask it of all of our panelists. Steve, I'm going to move on to you. From everything I see and hear, it seems that there's a dire need for more AI and tech specialists. Where on the planet should the U.S. be tapping for more brain power?
Well, I think you need to get the talent from wherever you can. And that's where the issue becomes, do you need those individuals physically in the U.S., or can you run your business remotely with your team assembled from all over the world? And I think that's where the human aspect of doing business comes in. And I saw this recently when Tina and I were at Sean's conference, Create the Future. that the real connections were made in person. And I saw that in Silicon Valley when I would walk around with my clients around San Francisco and bump into other founders and young entrepreneurs from other countries. All of the think tank mentality still is centered in specific areas geographically. And if you want the funding, you're going to probably need to be there physically and do those pitches in person. So I'm happy to say that hasn't changed so much. But I think that to be more agile, to run your company effectively, you have to balance the need between people on the ground and then the kind of people that can work behind the scenes. And so that's shifted and changed a lot of the dynamic of what I do, because traditionally I was always working with clients that needed to have people physically in the same office space. And now they can have them all over the world. And so everything is shifting. And I think artificial intelligence is also shifting the way that they're running their business models. And what I'm seeing with sort of cutting edge tech founders that I work with to get visas is that AI is becoming an increasing part of, maybe not. I think Sean said it. It's not necessarily the whole business, but it's part of it. And so that's something that I see growing. And I definitely see this trend that Tina mentioned too, where people have this feeling like they really need to incorporate it. The funny thing is that some of these founders don't know another world before all this technology because they're 18 to 25 and they've been there since the beginning of this movement. And so for them, it's normal to have that incorporated into their business models, whereas for us, we're just trying to keep up. And I think we have no choice but to not only keep up, but to try to stay ahead of where we are. And that's why attending a conference like the one that Sean created was really helpful, because if you go to those panels, you realize, wow, this is what's happening now and this is what's coming. And you have to adapt your way of working and get to know your competitors too, to see how they are using those as a competitive advantage and then adapt to that as well. So it's a never ending thing. It's a 24-hour cycle. I feel like if I'm asleep, I'm falling behind, like Tina said. So it's a little frightening, but I think we have to embrace it.
You know, we're in an election year. There's a lot of talk about immigration reform. Do you foresee that these developments will make it harder to bring AI people and tech talent into the U.S. or easier?
I think that it's all a question of priorities, and our country does not have its priorities lined up the right way. I had a client recently that had a difficult time getting their visa, even though I helped them. And they said, quasi-sarcastically, I could have just gone through the border and gotten here easier than the process that I had to go through. And this is a person who has projects set up for his business and will create 10 to 12 jobs within 2 years. And we still got a lot of pushback from the U.S. government. And so I think the priorities are skewed. I think you need to legalize and open what's called skilled migration as much as possible, because we need all those people. So if you can imagine, Bruce, all those AI geniuses and engineers and people that we need in the companies here to make them go, they can't get their visas, then companies are going to shift their operations elsewhere. And that's what we cannot afford to have. And we see that with students. There are 300,000 or so foreign students in the U.S. Most of them are STEM field, but there's not enough visas for them. So you have a reverse brain drain. You have them in the U.S., but you can't keep them here. That's because our priorities are skewed. So immigration reform is necessary. I'm positive by nature. I would probably not be able to do this job, but I'm very skeptical that that's going to happen anytime soon.
Well, I know that you've come up with some unique solutions to solve some of these problems. Explain those.
Yeah, what I like to do is use what's called the extraordinary ability visa. And the reason is because it has transparent criteria for qualifying. So someone can build their case. For example, if they don't have any media coverage about themselves, they can find PR companies who will place articles about them in different media. There's other categories where they can become a judge in a competition and get a letter. They can join prestigious organizations. So they can build their case over time to the point where I can recognize that they've met that threshold test. And there are no nationality restrictions like there are for certain visas. And there are no caps in terms of the number of visas per year. And they can be processed quickly. And you can be a founder of your own company. So you can self-sponsor through your own company and get the funding from people that work with Sean, for example, and not have to have the funding, because a lot of these young tech people don't have money, but they have know-how. They have specific platforms, and they can design things that can be converted and channeled into a successful business that creates jobs, but they don't have the funding. So that's been the key for me, is to sort of exploit that category, and I can build people's cases over time if they don't qualify right away, so I can get them that O1 visa so they can run their companies in the U.S.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we just have to. I love this group because we stick together. It's like a support group, especially when it comes to these things where we're just overwhelmed. I'm just blessed to be in this group, and I think that people should really lean on all the experts that we have.
Absolutely agreed. This is quite a stellar group of brain power right here. I'm going to move on a little bit to a couple of other areas I wanted to touch. One is that I recently saw a video of one of our ex-presidents rapping, and it was a little startling until I was told that it was actually an AI format. So it raised the question for me, and I'm going to ask the question to you. How is AI going to impact this election cycle, and is it a good thing or a bad thing, or does it even really matter? Sean, what do you think?
I think it's going to impact quite a bit, in the sense that in some areas, we're going to see a lot of videos that aren't real, but we're going to watch them. Later on, find out they're not real, but there'll be an emotion attached to them when we see them. And because of that emotion, it's going to stick with us. And even when we know that it's fake later on, there's still that impact. And I think this is going to happen more than people are planning for right now, because it's so easy there's so much software out there now that, these free trial this, free trial that, this group over there, where you're playing around, you get exactly the rap video of the old president, or you could have this person on the street saying this one thing, and then match that with the algorithms to push that ad or video to you at the right time where you're really engaged. And there's going to be so much need for Tina's help with our minds going forward in this election. I don't see why I think it's going to be something in the future where we're going to be trained in our schools, a course or business, and that just psychology of AI and how to take a step back and kind of disconnect. But there's some startups out there right now. There's going back to the event, a panel that was there. Accrete was the moderator for it. They they talked about what they're focused on, but some of the stuff is the deep fakes coming up for the elections that their software, their company is working with some government groups, some entities, because people already know it's going to be an issue. And some of these platforms that are, evaluating news and giving it true scores or credibility scores, they've raised a lot of money. There's other news platforms that are now coming out that the funding from them was from overseas groups that may not be as friendly to the U.S. And it's saying how, a certain number of the news articles and news segments that are pushed are AI generated and have motives behind it. I think there's a lot, and just us as consumers, I'm not sure we'll have our guard up as much as we really should. So it's just something to think about. And Tina, if you have some coaching advice for us for this, really like to listen.
Yeah, Tina, what do you think about this?
I think you kind of put the nail on the head. It's really, again, our own discernment and really stepping back. I know for me, my husband and my husband's very political. He reads everything, watches everything. I don't really trust very much. And I'm a pretty trustworthy person. So I just have to watch and listen myself and make my own decisions, and not from the ads, not from, I just have to kind of listen to what I hear and what I see, and away go with my gut.
Yeah. But I would like to add, steering conversations in that, it's not a new thing. I mean, how many of us saw videos from past elections where the camera was focused this way and the audience was huge. And then there's other video of the camera over that direction or that, and there's no audience there. So it's not a new thing, but it could be at an even easier level than ever before.
Well, it's really interesting because you're not necessarily old enough to remember this, but I saw as a kid, I saw the JFK and Nixon debate on TV. And people would say that if you listened to it on radio, Nixon won the debate. If you saw it on TV, Kennedy won the debate. And it was interesting because the way they lit Nixon was he looked like he was swarthy and dark. And he was lit that way on purpose by that network. So it tells you something about manipulation here. Tina, you brought up, the issue about going with your gut. We were trained to take data, analyze data, and Larry will back me up on this, and you make decisions on data. But now you can't necessarily rely on the data. So how do you make decisions when it comes to who do you vote for? Laurie, what do you think about that?
I think there's going to be a huge issue with this election with regard to deep fakes and all kinds of things. It used to be that people would be quoted in newspapers and quoted in look, I'm dating myself. Newspapers. Who reads a newspaper anymore? But people would be quoted in newscasts of what some candidate said. And the candidate would say, well, I didn't say that. And there's no recording of it so that you don't see them saying it. Well, now, I mean, I've seen deep fakes of people saying just about anything. And there are deep fakes of well-known actors doing advertisements that are on YouTube and elsewhere. And, presidential candidates saying things. I don't know how you end up being in a position where you can trust anything that you see nowadays. I think there's going to be a problem of confidence in trust in whatever anybody sees. And I don't know how we get past that. I really don't. It's not like you can put up a little blurb at the bottom of the screen that says, this is real. So that people know it. I think it's really problematic, and I don't know whether Jim has an answer to this or not. But how do you determine what's really true anymore when you've got to the point where AI and computer simulations can literally create a reality of any kind? I saw something a year and a half ago where Putin and Obama were on two separate monitors, and they were telling jokes to each other from what somebody was typing in on the keyboard. And it looked reasonable, but that was a year and a half ago. I mean, now it would look real based on where technology is nowadays. And I just don't have any idea what the answer is there. I really don't. It's a little bit scary, to be honest with you.
Jim, jump in on this conversation. You're the data guru here.
Yeah, so I think I think what everyone's saying is correct. I think even though we know most of the stuff that we'll see out there will be fake, it doesn't matter, right? It makes an impact and has a thing. So I don't think there's anything that's going to happen and change before the election. But I think what we're going to see is coming out of this is going to be a real scrutiny on identifying individuals, right? And just like you would a song. Right, if you made a home video and you put Billy Joel's song in the background and you upload that to YouTube, you can't publish that to everyone because you need copyright. It detects it. The same technology used to create these deepfakes could also use to detect them and detect. We all use face technology, right? We open our phones with that today. So there's no reason why you try to upload content. They could say, "Hey, hold on a minute, that's Joe Biden. Do you have permission to use his likeness?" And the same is true with conferences like this, right? We've heard, I'm sure we all heard that use case where the CFO got on a Zoom call with their provider and said, "Yes, transfer over this money," and the CFO is not real, right? So we do a lot of third-party authentication today, and we're going to see, and we usually do that when we're dealing person to system. The system wants to verify who you are. We're going to start to see more technologies that are going to have us do that, right? So different companies come and their whole business is your identity, right? We see that with verified things on Twitter and the like, but we're going to see it be more pervasive in our world and start to put lockdowns on who can use what images and what type of content. So I think it's going to be it doesn't completely solve it, but I think that's some of the controls you're going to start to see. And I think it's unfortunately going to have perhaps a little bit of overreach from governing bodies to determine what a lot of these social platforms are going to do. But it's like everything else. We swing the pendulum both ways, and we kind of see where it slows down.
I guess it's time to tell everybody the truth.
Bruce, can I just jump in for 1 second?
Right.
I think the worst problem we have right now is that the deep fakes and their inconsistency and their contradictions are equal in measure to what we're hearing from our two presidential candidates. I think they're giving deep fakes of their own. And I think they're artificial in their messaging. If you look at President Trump, who said that he wanted to limit H-1Bs because they took jobs from people. And then a few days ago, he said he wants everybody who even has a junior college degree from another country to get an automatic green card. It's clear that the deep fake and the real Trump are, they're indistinguishable at this point. And the messaging is so inconsistent from our candidates and contradictory. And I just see things through a singular lens, which is what their immigration stance is, that it could be fake or not. I still can't comprehend or understand or vote on that line. It's what are they planning to do? Because they change their tune every day.
And that's true on both sides.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Fernando. Oh, before I get to Fernando, it is truth time, and I have to tell everybody that there is no Sean Flynn. But we did a great job assembling him at this point, didn't we? Look at that.
Is that my cue to disappear?
Yeah. Fernando, what do you think about this topic of the elections?
Well, what I fear really is foreign interference. We had it in 2016, real reforms, and probably in 2020. I really fear foreign interference, and Sean alluded to this, especially from countries that do not share our interests or values. And they can pretty much do what they want, and they are virtually impossible to stop. And even if they are identified, for example, in 2016, they identify certain things, it gets so muddled in with what both sides are saying that you can't believe who's doing what. And it seems as we're paralyzed. And I'm really concerned the election will be affected by that. And that's just the terrible thing we have to deal with right now in our democracy. There are people who don't want the United States to succeed. I don't want to sound alarmist or whatever, that there's, calming under every tree. But as they used to say, this kind of stuff is very nefarious and very effective. So that's my deepest fear.
Thank you. Guys, I'm going to ask each of you to give me a final thought. Before I do that, I do want to mention that if you want to reach our panelists, and we hope that you do, their contact information will appear at the end of this program, so you can pick it up there. Final thoughts and comments, Sean.
This technology is moving so quickly that really what we hear, it's already outdated, to be honest. And I think there's some things that people really aren't seeing. Yes, there's that fear component, but there's also the opportunity to grab market share from competitors that are not adopting this technology, that are not changing with times. So either right now you're going to be able to gobble things up, or you're going to lose things. But I think there's going to be a huge transfer of business in the coming years. And hopefully everyone that is listening to this, that has connections to this group, sees those great opportunities.
Thank you for that. Fernando, final thoughts.
I want to emphasize what I said at the end of the question that you'd asked me. Always will be, I believe, maybe ruthlessly, a human element to all this. And the AI, as powerful as it is, it's useful. I use it. I'm not against it. Cannot replace, and I don't think will ever replace, the human side of it, our judgment, our skill, and so forth.
Okay. Tina, what about you?
Yeah, I'm going to go with feeling a little bit hopeful from Jim, what Jim had to say. That and also from Sean, that these are opportunities. Because we have big problems, these are opportunities for people to come in who are innovative and really smart and can use the technology to take us to a better place.
That's great. Steve?
Yeah, I would echo what Tina said. I think technology has oftentimes been used to put us in the situation we are now, which is a very complicated world that we live in. And our responsibility as humans is to use technology to fix those things that we've gotten wrong and to get us on the right course as a human race.
Okay. Jim?
I would like most of our customers and ourselves are not AI experts. But when we talk to AI experts, what they will tell you is the difference between a good model and a great model is the data that we put into it, which brings us back to the human side of this. So what can we control in this AI world? And what we can control is the data that we're collecting and managing. So my recommendation of this is to really focus on that and then leverage all the great work that's being done out there.
Okay, great. And Larry, you have the last word.
I think that change is always accelerating, and that it's become more of the norm than it ever has been before. I have always said that, people say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, my view is that if it ain't broke, you've got to try to fix it because change is inevitable, and it's making dramatic changes in how you operate, with whether it's the use of AI or the use of additional staff or just being absolutely creative. The economy and business is changing around you, and it's the people that are creative and are always looking forward at what the next thing may end up being will be the ones who will succeed. It'll be the changes that you make in your business that'll drive profitability, because the status quo no longer exists. You've got to continually reach for the future, and I think that's where the new status quo is.
And I think that's a great place for us to stop. I would mention also that Tina brought up the concept of critical thinking. And in our next panel discussion, we're going to be concentrating on the loss of critical thinking and the danger that it creates for the tech industry and the economy in general. So stay tuned for that. Once again, I'd like to thank our panelists. They've been terrific. Their contact information will appear right after this. And I'm Bruce Stout for the Rainmakers Knowledge Center. Thank you for joining us.